Good.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is David Rosario. I'm the board president of the Latino Providers Network, but I also am a State Farm agent, and I'd like to thank everyone that's coming on board. I'd like to thank Stephen. I'd like to thank Kate and Cindy and the board for putting this together. It's something that is wish we didn't have to do it, but it has to be done. So a little bit about the Latino Providers Network. I didn't mention much about the Latino Providers Network, and I got to we've been around for almost 30 to maximize resources in the Latino community through advocacy, education, and of course, most of all, networking. We provide a platform so that a lot of organizations that work in the Latino community can tell us what they do. You know, we can't wear hats, all types of hats, but what we can do is we can network with a lot of other organizations that do the work that is needed in this community. So by meeting each other and learning what we do, sometimes is the best thing because sometimes you can't figure it out in just a name. So when they come and they present in our meetings, we provide a lot of synergy within the organizations that come and things get done. Like with Stephen, right? With the MBLS partnerships, we collaborate with one another and make this community a lot better. So the Latino Providers Network been around for about 33 years. And in 2005, we finally got our 501c3 tax exempt. So we are a nonprofit organization here in Baltimore, Maryland. But we get around. We like to think of us as an organization that is in Maryland. So once again, I'd like to thank Cindy and Kate. Valuable in the Latino Perez board as the entire board. We all work together, the entire board, non-paid, and we get things done. So I'd like to pass it on to Kate. If I haven't forgotten anything, if you have any questions about Latino Providers Network, we're going to put our website on the bottom, www.lpnmd.org. Get on there. Oh, Kate's done it. She read my mind. You can go on there, and we have how to become a member, what we're doing, what resource meetings we're having, and we have a resource meeting at every end of the month on Mondays. So if you want to join us as a guest, go online, check us out. And without further ado, Kate.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Kate Jakuta. I'm on the Latino Providers Network board as the vice president. I also work for Everstand. And just want to really thank Stephen for partnering with LPN to do these presentations. And just a little context. So Latino Providers Network, like David said, we meet once a month with all of our different members. And, for reasons that are obvious, since January, we've been getting a lot of questions from people in our membership about, how do I help my clients if, the worst happens, they are facing deportation and they don't know what to, protect their property, or they don't know, they want to make sure their kids are taken care of. And we were just hearing these questions over and over and over again. And it just really spoke to us that, as David said, as much as we really wish this wasn't the case, that we didn't have to talk about these topics, it's really important that people have this information so that they are prepared and have all the resources and information they need should the worst happen. So we just want to really thank all the members that brought this to our attention. And we were really fortunate a few months ago, we were able to partner with Stephen and start this series of trainings. So we did an in-person training in May, which was great. And this is our first virtual training on power of attorney and standby guardianship. And today's training is really focused on working or training providers. So professionals who work with clients who are immigrants, who are volunteers with immigrant families, so that you have the information you need if one of your clients asks a question. Ideally, you'll feel confident by the end of the training to know how to do the forms. But at the very least, you would know a little bit about how to describe these resources and where to point people if they need extra help. And as I said, we've been really fortunate to partner with Stephen Coppin. So Stephen Coppin is an attorney with Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service, MVLS. Just a really quick introduction for Stephen. He's been working at MVLS since 2023 and specifically serves as the staff attorney for their Tangled Title program. And in this role, he works to remove barriers to clear title for clients all over the state of Maryland by providing legal services, community outreach, and advocating for systemic change. He works primarily on estate planning and estate administration issues for pro bono clients. But I've also just seen over the last few months, he's been doing trainings all over the place on power of attorney and standby guardianship. So I feel like he's really become the expert in our area on these two topics. And Stephen has his law degree from University of Oklahoma. So we're really fortunate to have you here, Stephen. And I will turn it over to you to start the presentation.
All right, can you hear me still? Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, David. Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate LPN and the community here for the opportunity. It's such a pressing moment, and I really appreciate that LPN is putting together these presentations. At MVLS, we do a variety of civil legal pro bono issues. We actually don't do immigration work, but when the community, this is such a moment that I think everybody needs to step up and look at what they can do, and how they can be helpful and how they can contribute their talents. So we took a look at what we could do, what we were already doing, and my program actually works on estate planning, and powers of attorney, and helping people manage their finances for our clients. And so the standby guardianship was a really natural extension of what we were doing. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. I know we have a lot of providers on the call. I'm going to be telling you what you need to know about these documents to kind of give you a basic understanding of how you can be helpful, how you can refer people to more resources, and kind of maybe guide you through some of those edge cases and how we can get more of this information out there. So feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. Feel free to connect after this. I'll give my information out so that we can connect further, so that we can have more of this information in your hands as providers and in community members' hands as well. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can start chatting. Okay. All right. Now it is telling me that I am all good and sharing. So if someone could put it in the chat.
You're good, Stephen.
Great. Thank you. Okay, awesome. So today we're going to be talking about, just to set the table a little bit, the main two documents we're going to be talking about today are the what is called a power of attorney and what is called standby guardianship. The main reason that we're doing that and we're focusing on these two documents specifically is that if you are employing both of them, you can create a really robust emergency plan, especially, we're focusing today on cases where someone may be deported. I'll put out there, at every time I've given this presentation, someone has asked me a question that I truly have never considered. And I think that that is one of the things about being in an area that is developing. And that's also one of the things about just being an attorney in general. So I think if someone puts a Q&A out there today, I am making the commitment that I'm going to try to find that answer for you, so that we can figure out some of these things together. So a little bit of an asterisk, giving myself a little bit space, but we have a lot to talk about. So I covered a little bit. I'm coming from the background of I do estate planning and property work in my day-to-day basis for pro bono clients. And we're going to give you today a little bit of the information and tools you need to understand how power of attorney and standby guardianship work in Maryland, learn how to fill the forms out, and then also know where to refer community members with complex situations, so that they can get more legal advice and more assistance. So it's for, I'm giving this presentation. I'm ready to talk to those who already work with immigrant clients in the community. but also those who might be community members here today. Um, so what are these two forms? At a very, very high level, the power of attorney allows you to grant someone control of you're basically designating an agent to take actions on your behalf. It's a very broad document. A lot of different things could be called powers of attorney, but one reason why this document is so useful is that in Maryland there is a statutory form. So that really increases the accessibility of this document to you as a provider, to people who might be looking at this online at home. Um, I will say that right now it's maybe a hard time. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of custom forms out there. So the one thing I will say, this form is very accessible. You want to make sure you get this form from a reliable resource. So there are a lot of, if you just search Power of Attorney Maryland into a Google or a search engine, you'll get a lot of just forms and the websites that are form aggregators. I would advise you to be careful. This form, the power of attorney form has literally been passed into statute. So you can get it from the statutory, you can get it from statutory language itself, or get it from a reputable resource that is pulling directly from that statute. But I also want to say with the power of attorney, it is a broad document. If you use that statutory form, gives someone a broad variety of rights and authorities and things that they can do on your behalf. So I never, even in an emergency situations, I would never want to push someone to do a power of attorney. And I think that really is, a difficult thing sometimes for a provider to find the right line. But it is something to consider because you really want that person, you want to trust that person that they can step into your shoes and do things on your behalf, and you have full confidence that they would do the right thing. But as I said before, it's very broad and it can let someone act on your behalf for a variety of matters, including financial, business, and healthcare. Now, healthcare, there's a little bit of a separation between what a power of attorney would be able to do and what someone would be able to do with a document called the Advanced Medical Directive. That's a little bit outside of what we're going to be doing today and what we're going to be talking about. But just to let you know, when it comes to healthcare decisions about your own person, that's a little bit of a different document. But when it comes to, securing healthcare, entering into contracts, working with money, that's kind of the realm of the power of attorney. A standby guardianship is actually a different kind of document. And in Maryland, it's it has a couple of specific use cases. So what a standby guardianship does is it allows a guardian for minor children that you have parental rights over. So you can designate someone to hold parental rights, to have the standby guardianship over your minor children, and they will be able to take action if something were to happen to you. There are 3 use cases for this document, the statutory form of this document. It is if you are physically incapacitated, if you are mentally incapacitated, or the one that we will focus on today, if you are subject to an adverse immigration action. So the way that these two things work together, someone can use the standby guardianship form to designate someone to step in if something were to happen to them in an emergency and take care of their children. And then the power of attorney can help allow that person to have the material access to bank accounts, to money, to other resources to provide for a house or for kids. People are really coming with a lot of different questions right now about a lot of different situations. So just wanted to let you know that these 2 documents can work together. They can work separately. But there are 2 statutory forms for both of these documents as well. So that's what really increases the access and really is why we're talking about these forms. Because the statutory form, if you're using that, that means that document is going to be recognized as effective legally. And it also means that you you can, if someone is looking for that resource and you give them the statutory form, you are just pointing them to statute. We're going to talk a little bit later about what some of the bounds are when you start stepping into the realm of legal advice and why you don't want to be doing that as a provider. So, big question, how to help, not help people filling out these forms and people coming to you asking for help with these forms. The big thing I want to point out is that you want to avoid the unauthorized practice of law. Not only is that like that is generally illegal to practice law without a license. Uh, Also, I really feel like in this moment, we do need to make sure that we're doing our best to not expose ourselves to more as a provider for people in the immigrant community. I think there's a lot of targeting going on and of providers specifically in spaces that are open for them. And as part of that process, people need to avoid exposure as much as possible. And so I think that's even an extra layer of why this is a moment to really, really avoid being committing the unauthorized practice of law. But it is already illegal to do that. And so what is that line? I think is a question that people often have. What is a line? When do I start practicing law versus telling somebody about something? Uh, there are, that is a line that a lot of people argue about as lawyers all the time. But I think an easy shorthand is if someone says, is this right for me? You're applying specific facts. You start gathering facts from them. You're applying specific facts to sort of a legal conclusion about whether or not a power of attorney or standby guardianship is right for somebody. If someone's coming to you and they say, should I do this? Is this right for me? Uh, you can give them information. So I'm going to show you resources later in the slideshow about what there are some great resources in Maryland. Some things like the Standby Guardianship Project, some things like the People's Law Library, that are really, really extensive in some ways about how they talk about these things. And I think you can refer people to those resources uh, really, really freely when it comes to referring people to these resources, pointing them out, giving them fact sheets on these things. Um, and then when they start to say, well, okay, so I have a house. Should I put it on this form or not? That's the part where you're talking about more the advice situation. If someone says, where do I put my name on this form? That's a little bit more general. That's just how you fill out the form. If someone says, do I include my kid on this form? Or what do I do with standby guardianships? There really are a lot of questions about do I, there are a lot of questions that can come into it. Now, one thing I will point out, I really do think people are stepping up and providing more legal advice in this moment. There are a lot of people, a lot of attorneys who are coming from the estate planning space and they want to be helpful. And I can kind of say that from the perspective of helping attorneys do that work. So I do think that people can get the advice and guidance that they need from attorneys in this moment. I think there are people who want to give that help. So I also want to put that out there just for saying that we can get that help too that might believe in this moment. So one of the questions is, in general, can I help someone fill out this form? Yes, you can help them write and mark on the form. You can give them the form. You can tell them you could tell them, like I said before, they said, where do I put my name on this form? Where do I put the other person's name on this form? You can point those things out to them, but you cannot make determinations on what might be best for an individual given their facts or given their circumstance, because that's really where you step over that line and start talking about the unauthorized practice of law. So we want to connect to legal resources to help fill in the gaps. And then broadly, I will tell you that we recommend that people fill out these forms in English. I also always would like to have those forms available in a different language if people need that resource. If people want to read a form in Spanish, um, that's great. But they want to fill out the form in English. And the reason for that is generally that, especially with the power of attorney, you're going to be taking that to other parties. You're going to be taking that to the bank. You're going to be taking that to, um, you might take it to a lawyer even. And if you want to take those documents and use them, they need to be read by the person you're bringing it to. So in that case, recommend English for all of these documents. And then also I will specifically say that for the standby guardianship, the form itself says that it needs to be filled out in English to be legally effective. So that is another thing to consider. So generally, I say just fill it all out in English. That is the general recommendation that we give to people. So now I'm going to start talking about the form, each form in particular, and point out some of the important sections. Um, these forms are long, especially sorry, I should say the power of attorney form is long. The standby guardianship form is actually not that long. It is much more concise. It's specific. The power of attorney form, that is the statutory form, is actually quite long. And that is part of why I say that it provides a lot of general rights to someone. So they should really know that they want to fill out that form. We host that form on our site. We pull it down every time it gets updated in statute and update our section. So I included a link to where we have it on our website. I've also included the People's Law Library, which is also an incredible resource in Maryland for a variety of things, but they have a great page on the power of attorney form. And like I said, in general, what is it used for? The power of attorney. The power of attorney is used for granting an agent authority to take actions on your behalf. So really, like they're stepping into your shoes. They're able to sign things for you with that power of attorney form, and it can be very, very general. What are the downsides? Is that it's very broad, and that's why you see that potential for abuse. In other contexts, you may see um, there might be a lot of stories about sort of like elder abuse specifically with these documents. So these documents are powerful, and that power, carries the risk. So for clients who are facing these situations, facing a deportation, facing adverse immigration consequences, uh, obviously they're, planning for the worst case of emergencies. Um, so I think that another reason why they should get good advice on whether or not this form is right for them. And they should really, really consider whether or not the persons that they're entrusting with this are the people that they can trust to put money into their hand and trust that that person would do that, would use that money on their behalf. There are a few, you know, I'll point out a few of the quirks and like the things about the power of attorney form. Uh, Power of attorneys can be immediate, or they can come into effect later. And so there's a section of the form where that comes into play that's actually in the slide I'm going to show. Generally, we recommend that they become effective immediately. And that is because if you include a condition, then oftentimes the person that you're giving the form to will ask to see proof of the condition. And that's not that's one of those things where people sometimes, I've advised people to include a springing condition or include something that becomes effective. But in general, if the person that they are trusting with this power of attorney, they trust them explicitly, implicitly to use this money for them, I advise immediately. But here are some non-immediate options just for an idea of kind of what could happen. When certain people agree that you're incapacitated, like a doctor, or only upon the written certification of your doctor that you're unable to reasonably, responsibly manage your finances. That is, that is cut and copied from some of the work that we do with the states and older adults. But just as an example, um, I want to show you some of the other sections. How long a power of attorney is something that also the form asks you, like, do you want it to be indefinite or do you want it to be for a certain period of time? Um, you need to name someone with the power of attorney. That person is your agent. That person will be taking actions on your behalf. You can name backups. In this context, I do think backups are important. People often ask, do the people who are receiving a standby guardianship or a power of attorney need to have citizenship themselves? It is not a requirement that they have citizenship status, but their own status is something to consider. And both documents allow you to have backups. So that comes into that sort of analysis. Do we want to have backup people in case the first person is unavailable? And generally, I would say backups are good. Um, but with both of these things, standby guardianship giving, with delegating some authorities relating to children and power of attorney delegating authority relative to your money, both of these things are really important. What we're giving away, both these documents, is really important. Um, so they do need to be considered. So you need to name an individual, general or limited. So there are actually two options that the Maryland statute would give you. So it's a general or a limited power of attorney. And then I'll also say beyond that, if someone is working with an attorney who's giving them advice, they can really end up with almost an infinite amount of options. Like they can really cut down or add things to that power of attorney form. That just changes whether or not it would be deemed effective. With the statutory form, you get that automatic effectiveness. Like Maryland law says that because you use the form that we provided, we automatically will recognize that that is lawful and effective. Um, so a limited POA can be useful, but if someone is just filling out a power of attorney to give someone broad broad license to manage their affairs, but they don't really have anything in mind, then the general is probably more effective. The power of attorney also needs to be notarized. Now I'm going to show you some of the sections, some of the actual sections of what the power of attorney form looks like. So this first section you can see here, this is the first page. So this first page of the power of attorney is actually giving instructions to the agent. And you can see at the bottom, important information for the agent. The agent should have the power of attorney form. Generally, the agent and the people who are using these forms should get the forms when you produce them, especially in an emergency context where that person needs to kind of step into. So either they need to get the forms themselves or they need to know where they're going to be. If that is like a box or a safekeeping object, they need to know how to get into there. This first part of the power of attorney is towards the person who is signing it. So the person who's the principal. And it gives them some, just baseline warnings about here's what a power of attorney does. Here is what you should understand if you were signing this form. This designation of agent form, you can see designation of agent. And then down here, you see name of principal, name the following person as my agent. This is what the form is doing. This is the main, like if you did not fill out this section, you did not probably properly assign power of attorney. So there's another thing you can do where it says naming co-agents. If you do co-agents, that means people have to act together to make choices. If you do agent and then backup agents, the backup agents will just come into play if the first person is unavailable. Um, you know, co-agents requires coordination. And so generally, I would say that ends up being a hassle and you don't want to introduce hassles to using the form generally, but some people might want two people to agree to choices. So you will see that the default assumption of the power of attorney is that it is effective immediately. If you want to um, have it not be effective immediately, if you want to create a triggering condition, you actually have to go to the special instructions, which is it's the next, I believe it's on the next slide, but it's a fill in the blank section of the power of attorney form where you can include free form, whatever you want to write. So that's important to know. The default is effective immediately unless you write something into the special instructions. The termination date also has a default. The termination date default is that it just lasts forever until you revoke it, until rip up the power of attorney. It is just effective forever. But you can see in this termination date section, there's actually a part where you would include when it would terminate, which is a difference between the effective date and the termination date. So if you want to change the effective date, you have to put it in special instructions. If you want to change the termination date, they've given you a line right there. And then also, just knowledge, this power of attorney, every copy of it is effective, which is another reason why, someone should really know that they want to make this form, is because once you make it, it's hard to rein it back in because copies are effective as the original. Someone might ask, can it be revoked? The answer is yes. That's a little bit outside the bounds of, what I'm going to cover in the presentation, but yes, it can be revoked. But it is hard to do because the copies are as effective as the original. Special instructions, this special instruction section actually, you could put a lot of different special instructions in here. I will say if someone wants to put a lot of special instructions in here, they probably should get some legal advice because you may or may not be doing what you want to do because it's a really long form and you have to interpret these special instructions, in the whole context of this form. So now, if you're clicking along, we're going to move to the standby guardianships forms. I've included a couple links here for resources. So one is the People's Law section on standby guardianship. One is where you can find the form from, I believe, the Standby Guardianship Project. And what it is used for is granting someone ability to take over parental responsibilities in an emergency. Three main types, but most relevant today is if a parent is subject to an adverse immigration action. I want to kind of like head off a few of the biggest questions that I get. The standby guardianship form doesn't give, even when the standby guardianship comes into play, the standby guardian will not have exclusive rights, exclusive parental rights. They're really stepping in to help. If at any point the parent and the standby guardian disagreed, the parent's preference would control. So it's really not like you are delegating someone to step in and to be able to step in, but they're not stepping in to like supplant or remove your ability to manage for your child, just to help. And this form allows a standby guardian to come into effect upon this triggering event. But they also, in general, someone can go and be appointed by the court. The reason you would fill out the form is so that you can do it automatically for a set period of time, which is 180 days, rather than going to court to go by motion to get an appointment. Some of the things, there's a great FAQ at this link to learn more about some of the frequently asked questions. Do you need both parents' consent? The answer would be yes, with exceptions. There are a lot of exceptions on the form to when you wouldn't need another parent to sign or consent. I will say that form is sometimes a little bit misleading. If you download it from the links, it'll come in a packet of 5 pages. The first 4 pages are the standby guardianship petition. The fifth page, I'll show you this in slides to come. The fifth page is a consent. So if you don't have both parents with you at the same time, or both people with parental rights, you would use the consent form that is the fifth page. But if you have both, if you have all parties with parental rights in front of you, filling out the form together, then you don't actually need that fifth page because that fifth page is a consent. But it is all in that packet because oftentimes you won't have both people with you. Or, one person's asking you about this. Do you know what this is? Do you know what the form is? But they need to take it back home so that the other person can sign it. For the standby guardianship, you need all the parties with parental rights and then also the standby guardian to sign it, but it does not need to be notarized. It also does not take effect immediately, which is a contrast from that from the power of attorney form. And then I also say that it is most effective when paired with follow through. So you really want to sit down and think about what are the day-to-day activities that someone needs to take care of for my kid or kids, and have I given the person everything they need? So really basic, do they have a key to the house if I want them to be able to go in and out of the house? Are they on a list at school of a trusted person to pick up, drop off kids? Are they, if my child has any special needs, has any medicine that they need, any particular appointments that they go to, does this person who may have to step in, do they know about those factors? Do they have that information? Do they have doctor's numbers? Do they have allergy information? All of these types of things that are just basic and sort of understood from your perspective as someone who is taking care of your kid every day. If someone else needs to, they will have to know this information as well. Also, in our particular, in the way that we're talking about this particularly, you also want to make sure you assemble the important documents for your child. So their birth certificates, maybe their passport, additional emergency contacts, maybe the child's social security card. Also, we really advise when people are typically filling out the standby guardianship form to also fill out what is called an ICE contact waiver, because the situation that we're imagining is that a parent has an adverse immigration action and maybe in custody, maybe getting deported. So that contact waiver allows preliminarily allows for communication with that person who might be detained. So there are a lot of things to consider that are more about ensuring maximum effectiveness of the document, but that also depends on every individual child situation. So here is the designation of the standby guardian. So once again, there are a lot of places to sign and input information on a standby guardian form, but like the main thing that you're trying to do is designate someone as a standby guardian. So here's the part where you put the standby guardian's name on the form for the first time. You can see at the top it says I/we. This form is a default form. It's a template. It's written such that one parent could be making this declaration, or two parents together could be making this declaration. And so it says I/we, your names, the person filling out the form, the person with parental rights, designate the name of the standby guardian, whoever is going to help you, whose address is blank, whose telephone number is blank, and whose email is blank. Um, and then you see a really important distinction here as a standby guardian of the person or of the property or the person and the property. We're gonna get into this distinction a little bit, but I also want to highlight there that you put name of children down there and their date of birth as well. So standby guardianships, what do they look like? What can they do? So here's some more sections that are pulled from the form. Right underneath that section I just showed you, they spell it out what they mean by uh, guardian of the person and guardian of the property. So guardian of the person makes non-financial decisions, housing, medical care, education, clothing, food. And then guardian of the property makes financial decisions. So paying bills or costs to cover their children's personal needs, applying for benefits, paying taxes. So there is, I think people probably are already kind of thinking through what these things could mean and see that there is a lot of overlap between these things. But, there are some ways to create this like legal distinction. Uh, this is something that, a lot of people like are probably wanting both. But if they don't know and this doesn't make sense to them, this is a great part for them to be getting some advice on the form. Um, because it is a relevant distinction. And just speeding through this part of the form may not be, I would say it's not appropriate. I'm going to show you this. This consent form is on the 5th page of the standby guardianship packet. So it's a packet of 5 forms. The first 4 will like 100% need to be filled out. If you didn't fill out the first 4 and you filled out the 5th one, you haven't consented. You haven't consented to anything because there hasn't been a designation. So the first 4, that's a designation. The fifth page of that packet is that consent. It says consent to designation of standby guardian at the top. The parent who wasn't present at the first signing is going to have to fill this out, is going to have to get signatures separately, witnesses separately for them signing this form. You don't need a notarization, but you are going to need witnesses. And once again, as a reminder, this whole form, you want to do it in English. Occasionally, you will see this bilingual form, but make sure you fill out the form in the English version. So more, getting past the forms a little bit, what do we do if people need legal advice? And what do we do if people need legal assistance? I will say the Access to Justice, Maryland Access to Justice page has an incredible resource of legal providers. Um, a lot of the providers, speaking generally from just I guess just from the behind the curtain perspective, a lot of the providers who generally provide estate planning would be the people who might and are already helping when it comes to standby guardianships. There's a little bit of an advertising question about how aggressively people are advertising the service. But I'm telling you that in Maryland, most of the people who are doing estate planning are stepping into standby guardianships or providing them. So just as shorthand for who you can reach out to if you need help with the standby guardianship, that's who to reach out to. Also, a lot of the people who need help kind of have some general questions about property and how to manage it, and how to set things up ahead of time. All of that is, I would say, in a normal kind of estate planning portfolio if you're looking for help for these people. Also, information, great to find at law libraries, great to find at the online resources that we've pointed out before. There are self-help centers. I do recognize that going in person can be really challenging and is really fraught right now. A lot of those self-help centers, though, you can call. So even for people um, who have all kinds of normal legal issues right now, on top of other issues that they're facing, they should um, they should still be able to call in to Maryland court legal help centers and try to get some help with those legal issues. And if they call, they won't have to come in person. It's an additional protection for them. Also, if they're working with attorneys, like through our program or other programs, they may be able to work mostly remotely. That signature will have to be like they will have to physically sign the document. But I think people are really ready to accommodate people's needs there. I'm putting obviously, I'm putting us on there as a power of attorney and standby guardianship resource. Uh, we are set up that if people are calling our intake line and looking for standby guardianships, we are ready to take them. The power of attorney that's in our normal portfolio, so we're ready for that as well. And I also included a few immigration resources because obviously we need those as well. The immigration providers, I'm not sure in their cases about whether or not if they're providing standby guardianships or not. Before, I think they were not. I don't know if that has changed. We're doing a thing that, we're all working day by day. We're all doing our best on a day by day basis. So before we get into Q&A, I want to make sure that we covered just a recap of what we covered before we get into that. We understand how power of attorney and standby guardianship work in Maryland. We learned a little bit about how to help community members fill out the forms, and I'm sure we'll pull out the forms a little bit more in Q&A. And then we also know where to refer them with complex situations for legal advice and assistance. The I am always helpful. If people call our intake, I guess I want to shout out my team. If people call our intake, we have dedicated intake staff that are really, really, really helpful when it comes to referrals. I use their referral list when I do referrals, but I also would love to be a resource for people who are looking for help at this moment. So just, in conclusion, these forms are incredibly helpful, but they are legal forms. People are giving away legal rights. They're assigning legal responsibilities to other people. So they need to be sure that they want to do it, and they need to be sure that these forms are going to work the way they want them to. So you can give them resources, you can give them the forms, you can point them to legal information that might answer their question, but please avoid the unauthorized practices of law because I want to make sure that everyone here can continue to do the good work that they're already doing. Yeah. So from there, I think I'm actually going to go into Q&A and try to be helpful there.
Okay.